Ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies,
Mhm.
cats and dogs, it is time again for Atlantic City Focus's Five Questions. And today we're back with uh, writer, boxer, and actor Chris Cream. Now, over the weekend, we lost, in my opinion, one of the legends in the world of heavyweight boxing, George Edward Foreman. And so uh, I reached out to Chris Cream because, uh, like Mr. Foreman, he can really assess uh, George Foreman as an actor and also a boxer. And it's just important that we remember uh, Chris Cream's grandfather, Jersey Joe, as well as we have to make sure we keep the legacy of George Foreman alive and not
Sure.
let other people tell his story. I say that, but I
Sure.
I did not go to the movie theater to see George, to be honest. But I'm glad they made the film. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Chris Cream to Five Questions. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Salute to you and salute to Big George.
Thank you. Okay. Um, we'll start off with this question. What is the connection between George Foreman and your family?
Uh, Boxing family, boxing
Your
royalty.
boxing family.
Of my grandfather, again, being Jersey Joe Walcott, who was former heavyweight champion of the world, is in the earlier lineage of the belt that George held a couple of times in his career. Um, to climb that mountain once is an incredible feat. To climb it twice, three times, or five times, like in Evander Holyfield, is that lets you know how special that is. There aren't many people well that and George did it twice early in his career when he was a younger fighter, and then came back and actually eclipsed my grandfather's uh, record as the oldest man to win that title when he beat Michael Moore. So that it's a family lineage and boxing family that's it's a fraternity.
This really isn't part of the five questions, but I'm sure your family was acutely aware of that when he beat Michael Moore. What was your reaction, your family's
I mean,
reaction to?
every record is made to be broken,
Okay,
uh, and to hold that record for as long as my grandfather held it is if he to attain that was a dream. So to be mentioned in it is just a blessing. It's a humbling thing. So there's only one name above that one right there at this point. And if you got down to the technicality of things, we could get into the IBF versus Ring Magazine lineage undisputed versus we could argue that out, but no need.
right.
It's about honoring George and being who he is in the history of championship fighters, heavyweight championship fighters.
Okay. Uh, who was the better fighter, young George or George the Preacher, older George?
Ooh, 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 ooh. That's a good question because they definitely were two different fighters. Uh, but I tend to think, mm, wow, wow, that's like a 51-49 flip that could go either way because older George was definitely smarter. He was definitely smarter, and he was so weathered that it was harder to hurt him because he knew how to absorb punishment different. However, the wherewithal of doing that, you could see it take a toll on older George, where younger George would just either fight through it and get beat down eventually, or muscle up and get you. So that's it's a 51-49 argument, depending on which one of them you want to look at. Like, because
Okay.
younger George, when he just was like, oh, hey, woo, and so that wide jib, glove open, pow, and just like, where'd that come from? That unmerciful
Yeah.
beating that he put on, like Joe Smoking Joe and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, yo, wait a minute, Cat can't do this to him. Like people don't do that to Joe, and he did that to Joe.
Right.
Uh, and so 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other,
Yeah.
because older George
I'll
beat the
just
brakes
say
off
this.
Holyfield.
I'll just say this. I saw older George come on his comeback at Tropicana, and he fought a boy as big as a doorway. I mean, this guy was really as big as a doorway, and he carried the boy for like 4 rounds, and he said, "Okay, y'all got y'all show," and then
Time
put
to
him on
go.
his back. Cause
Yeah,
at that age, he was still the hardest hitting heavyweight
yeah.
that I had seen fighting at that time. I contend, me personally, now I'm not a professional, you are, but I contend that old George hit harder than Tyson.
Mm.
I
I
could
think
be wrong, but I think
again,
young George
and I'm
definitely hit
analyzing.
harder than
My
Tyson.
brain is searching. My brain is searching those things. Um, so the precision of knowledge, the precision of knowledge is efficient.
Right.
So that older George shooting a much more proficient and efficient punch, the impact is way different than that wide George. Where
Right.
Mike Tyson, he was efficient when he was young, but he also had a wild mean streak to him that would make him miss. So those things, right? But he was efficient. If you saw that tight movement, he was in
Yeah.
here with it. It was
Yeah.
nothing wide, but he
Yeah.
would also be so aggressive that when he would miss far. So I can see why he would say that. Old George was definitely a very precise and all that straight in front of you, big body shit. Yeah, and then when he wanted to hit you with them old fashioned, I can see why you say that. I can't.
Okay, listen,
Can't
you're a
argue it.
professional. I just know I've seen fights in my time, and people who never seen George Foreman hit somebody just don't have
George will
any
crumble you.
idea of the power.
George will crumble you.
I mean, the guy he fought when I saw the comeback, he could have easily knocked him out of the ring, no problem.
So I think it's Buffalo Wild Wings. I can't remember which one it is. Shout out to Buffalo Wild Wings sitting here doing a drop for them. I don't know if all of them had, but I was definitely in one of the Buffalo Wild Wings, and they had the hand wraps from Muhammad Ali and
Right,
George Foreman up in the glass case. They had
right,
hand wraps in there, and you could literally put your hand up to it to see what the size your hand was to theirs.
right,
I got a pretty big fist. My grandfather's fist was huge. My grandfather's fist was huge.
right.
Man, George Foreman's rap. When you put your hand in George, I could put my hand in George Foreman's rap 4 times.
Wow.
That's how big George Foreman's hands were, bro. His hands were huge. Ali's, I could probably fit Ali.
Okay.
I could probably fit Ali. Like, but George Foreman's was like, it was a street sign.
Let's go on. Uh, how would you rate George Foreman as an actor?
How would hold on one second. No. How would I rate him after?
No, as an actor, and the few things he did screen wise, commercials, films here and there, TV
I mean,
appearances.
George was a great salesman. Great George
Okay.
was a great salesman. I think George did a great job as a pitch man.
Right.
Um, and I saw George in a couple early on flicks, but George was always George. In terms of it was hard to escape that big body and that personality of what he looked like. So they
Right.
had to play to that. Um, and just like Ali, I don't think Ali could step out of being himself to be a good actor, like in the
Right.
greatest. Ali sucked in the greatest because he could only be himself, which I think Will Smith did a better job being Ali than Ali as an actor. If that
Okay.
makes sense to you,
Okay.
um, because I Will had to work to become. Ali was just being, so there's no acting to it. So when you're trying to act like yourself, it's a bad representation.
Okay.
That's an actor and me critiquing that part right there.
Okay.
Because he's going to overdo it or underdo it as opposed to just doing it. Especially without being an actor. Without being an actor, you don't know those things.
Okay.
Whereas George, they would put George in roles, and George would just just be George, which was fine. Whereas okay, let's take Jersey Joe again. Jersey Joe was in Bogart's last film. Humphrey Bogart's last film was called The Harder They Fall, and it was a boxing movie. And Jersey Joe played uh, the cornerman trainer for uh for Big George, the guy who was the champion or whatever. The mob was trying to make the champion. Bogart was a promoter, and so on and so forth. But I mean, you watch it, and you assess Walcott in there, and from the actor, not because of me, just
Right.
for your own edification, and check
Okay.
it out. And since we're putting boxes on scales, and let's see across the board, that might be just a conversation in and of itself
Yeah.
one day.
I was about to say we'll have to have you back to discuss two things. Um, Actors who play themselves like Seinfeld and Larry David, and then or versions of themselves, and then also
Mm-hmm.
maybe your favorite performances by boxers in films or
Oh,
TV.
okay, okay, we can do that one day.
Yeah,
Sure,
we definitely
sure,
do
for
that
sure.
one day. Um, was there anything was there anything as a fighter that you learned from George Foreman?
I mean, styles make fights. That sounds cliche, but
Right.
it's very true. Styles definitely make fights. So, due to your body type, your athleticism or what have you, will determine what type of skill set you're probably going to be better suited bringing forth.
Now,
Um,
let me.
I'm nowhere near George. Go ahead.
I just want to say,
Go ahead.
and I'm asking this just to get a better understanding because, like I said, I don't box, but
Hmm.
I play basketball. And one thing
Hmm.
I always say is you can't coach height. You might be faster than me, but if you
Right.
go into the rim, I know where you're going.
Right. Right. Period. Period.
Okay.
But at the same time, that dude with all that height and all that size, he can't do what that three can do. He can't
Right.
slash. He can't. There's very few
Right.
Wembanyama's out there.
Right. Right.
There's
Right.
very few Kevin Durant's. There's very few of them.
Right.
And
Right.
even them Wembanyama's and Kevin Durant's can't be Shaq.
Right.
So you ain't gonna have all those skill sets in one body and be complete. And Embiid would be the first closest to that, but we see what nature does to his body because it's not meant to do
Right.
all of those things.
And
You got
so
to
it
pick your poison and
right.
master it.
And so it's the same thing with when you say styles make
I
fights.
couldn't do it. I could. It wouldn't make sense for me to go in there at 170 pounds and try to wail on somebody like George Foreman does. It makes more sense for me to make lateral movement and pick my punches and wear somebody down through intellect and the science than it does just to sheer. Even I pack a pretty good punch if I need to, but it's still the pounds of pressure he got in his hands. It's way different. It's way
Right.
different. So he could just boom, boom and hit you. I might be able to sneak you and get you and do that. But if we boxing, that's not the smartest thing to do. If George is swinging that punch, even you, if you're swinging that roundhouse punch, anybody's going to duck. Look at your size.
Right. Right.
They
Right.
got to duck.
Right.
I don't want to catch that. Anybody can. You don't want to catch that. Whereas me,
Right.
you might
Right.
really. I might be able to eat that. I might be able to. You might think that. You're not in your wildest imagination think you could eat that from George Foreman.
No, no. One thing I will say again, not being the expert, but just observing. When I saw the Michael Moore fight on HBO, as it was happening, and I told my friend who I was watching it with, I said, "This Joker learned from the Rumble in the Jungle." You could tell George
Yeah,
was sitting there. He was sitting there eating some punches and stuff like that. And he said, and I
right.
told him, I said, Michael Moore about to punch himself out, and George is going to catch him. And
Yep.
to me,
And he
it was
and he caught
almost
him with
like
the
the
most
same
basic
thing.
1-2 straight down the pipe. The 1-2 right. I can see as you talk. I can see it. He going boop boop, and then he like right boop boop. They not even a big woof that George throws. He
Yeah.
said,
Right.
and his chin went down. He crumbled and did not. It could, eyes went glass.
Yep.
Like whoa, that
Yeah.
1-2 did that.
Yeah.
But
But
that right hand coming down
if you
to the
see the
front,
tape,
efficient.
if you see the tape, Moore is on his back and his nose is about that wide open. So he didn't hit him with a love tap.
You want to see a great fight? George Foreman fight. Go watch the great the White Huawei
Okay.
and George Foreman.
Okay.
Huawei's from Camden too. Huawei's a Camden champion. Salute to him, Hall of Famer. Salute to Huawei. Uh, Go watch him and Holyfield too.
Yeah.
Huawei was a dog, bro. He was a
Okay.
dog.
It
But
definitely,
yeah, but
and
that
you know
joint hit.
what? He's done some amazing things outside of the ring for our community here in Atlantic City too. He's a
Awesome,
good brother.
awesome,
He's a good
awesome.
brother.
Shout out to him.
He was one of my favorite fighters back in the '80s when boxing was electric here in Atlantic City.
Yeah, right. You got to figure he's cut from the cloth of Joe Frazier with that crouchy style because he's short and he's small. And, get up under, but it got that Camden dog in him, man. He was like, I don't care about that. Do that. Hey, hey, you know what I'm talking
I know, I know, I know, I know.
about.
Listen, we thank you for playing 5 questions. We're gonna get you out on this. Where
Okay.
would you rank George Foreman among the pantheon of heavyweights?
This might sound crazy and nostalgically, and because of what he did outside of the ring, we affectionately give Ali the title of the GOAT. Um, but if you look at wins and losses and some names on the list and career arcs and things like that, there are several fighters who could be placed above Ali
Okay.
on paper. And arguably George Foreman could be there as well. Arguably
Okay.
George Foreman. Definitely Evander Holyfield as a 5-time heavyweight champion, but people don't mention those things because the name of Ali is what it is. The icon of Ali is who he is. The brashness of what he meant to us as a struggling community of people, a struggling nation of people. He gave us such a inspirational vigor back about ourselves. He put the backbone back in us that we were told to tuck. So we revere him in a different way. But if we just take off the rose colored glasses and look at the careers, again, Foreman's could very, very easily be placed above his.
Thank you. Chris Cream, is there anything you'd like to say about George Foreman or boxing or anything before I let you go?
I want to say salute to Atlantic City Boxing, Ray McCline and Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame and his whole team and everybody who's been inducted to this point. The new class coming and those fights that are happening in Atlantic City now. Like you said, there was a golden age of Atlantic City. Atlantic City used to be the Vegas of boxing, and then we had to run. We had to run, and it'd be lovely to bring that feeling all the way back to Atlanta. Oddly enough, the president was integral in that. He was very much involved in that, and I could see why a lot of black fighters revere him from that era because he was definitely integral in them becoming household names and rich people themselves. He was in their corner, so to speak. So when we look at those guys and we flip out them for being pro this or pro that, he may have changed their lives through different lens as it relates to that right there. But as it stands now, I think uh continue. I know we got Boots and this fighting down in next month. And we had a few other fights, and I think Ray Ford, another Camden champion, is about to come down there and fight on that court card too. So it's coming back, and I want the people of Atlantic City, South Jersey, Camden, Philly, Baltimore to know that Atlantic City was once a hub, and it will be a hub again if we I'll support it.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bro.